and he's with us now. Stephen K. Bannon, thanks for being with us, Steve.
Well, thanks, John. I think this is the power of the John Fredericks Radio Network. On a dime, you can flip and say, hey, let's just go do it live. And it was very powerful last night. I just got a report that I think 20 million viewers in China last night. They live streamed it live. They had the G News and GTV team here, and Luda, who's their big TV personality, and he live streamed the thing. There was a massive audience in China. I heard the live streaming that they did from the club was huge. So it was quite an event last night. I want to thank you for being there and doing the live radio broadcast, because I think that added a lot to it. The whole sense of it. So it was a great night, and the president's speech in Dayton was almost a big hunk of his Dayton speech. He did two things in Dayton. He totally beat down on the Chinese Communist Party. He talked about economic nationalism and bringing the imperative of bringing jobs back. But, man, he really went off on this voting fraud thing. I think the president's very focused now on exactly what's going to happen, is that they need to reverse. He's going to win on Election Day and win big with the real vote, and they've got to reverse that. They're going to use all means necessary to basically reverse the fact of that election. And I think President Trump is completely woke to that, and is really the speech in Dayton. We're going to do polls to open the show today on war and pandemic, but the president's obviously very, very focused on this now. And he's focused on the details. I mean, the granularity. He was talking about things happening in Michigan, things we talked about in your show afterwards, the issues in Michigan, the issues in Pennsylvania. So he's very much into the granularity of this.
They're doing by extending these mail-in ballot deadlines. I mean, it's so fraudulent. You look, for instance, you take Wisconsin. Wisconsin always, the ballot had to be there, and it's up to the person voting. I mean, you're not an idiot. You apply for the ballot, you get it, you mail it back in time. But it had to be there by 8 p.m. of election night. Now a judge just extended it for 6 days. So it's got to be postmarked, but it can take 6 days to get there, which means I can mail it at, midnight on election day after the polls have closed. This doesn't make any sense. And now Michigan's got 2 weeks, 14 days. So, Steve Bannon, it almost seems like what the Democrats are doing is they want an extension so they can see how many votes they need to win. And then they'll just, manufacture them, or they'll find them in a box. I mean, doesn't it appear that way, or is it just me?
It's not appear. This is what they're doing. Remember, let's go back in time, and this is why the John Fredericks Radio Network helped us launch War and Pandemic. I noticed this is why did we start focusing on this, back in the spring? We pride ourselves in being the signal, not the noise. The one thing I noticed is these Democratic primaries. These primaries, nobody was voting. They were all doing it by mail, and they didn't have systems set up to handle it. This is why in this city that we're sitting in their primaries, which Republicans had nothing to do with, it was all run by Democrats. 30% of the votes, of the mail-in votes in Brooklyn, were tossed out. These are Democrats tossed their own votes out because they were, illegitimate or couldn't meet the standards. They couldn't be certified. 20% in Manhattan. And so I started noticing this, and I said, oh, my God, this is going to be it. And I started really focusing on the messaging they were doing on mainstream media. What Democrats did is they always do an overplaying their hand, whether it's don't push Merrick Garland because Hillary's going to win, we'll get a more progressive judge, when she's in there. Ginsburg, don't step down, we'll get a more progressive one when Hillary wins. President Clinton will get 2 picks her first year, right? They always overplay their hands. They can't help themselves. Here, what they were doing, I noticed they were traumatizing their base. Whereas on Pandemic and, your show, you and I disagree. Jack Maxey disagree. That's fine. We have a reasonable conversation. We lay out alternatives. People make their own judgments. In the Democrat media, if you look at the mainstream media, traumatized their base with really not really giving them information. And 69% don't want to go to a polling place. They understand. They have a horrible fact right now. They can't get people actually out to vote on Election Day. And in doing that, they need, in a mad panic, to come up with a plan to essentially manufacture enough votes so that they can reverse the fact that Donald Trump's going to win on Election Day. This is unique in American history, totally driven by the Democrats. And that's why this is so important. I tell people, look, even if Trump's not your guy, just to keep the continuation of our republic, you have to back Trump's victory on game day. This is why Joe Biden is going to be. Look, he'll never take office because we'll fight that. We'll fight that tooth and nail. But you're talking about an illegitimate, unelected guy. A whole administration they're trying to push forward because you just nailed it. They are changing the rules at every level they can possibly can. And by the way, you haven't seen the worst yet. The worst is when you're going to get in there and start getting into the ballots themselves. They intend to keep counting until they win. That's why they got social media talking about it. That's why they got Facebook talking about it. Facebook, just another huge announcement. You go to Zero Hedge, the lead story is about how social media is going to be taking off voices they feel are violent. So in other words, the street war that's going to come, they're going to have all opportunity to get BLM up. They're going to have all opportunity to get Antifa up. But when conservative groups try to start rallying people to come to basically, out to show the support for the president, that there's not anarchy and there's not chaos, that's all going to get taken down. So this is a three-pot. They've got the legal part, which is your part you just talked about. They've got the street muscle, which is all these rioters and protesters. And they've got the most important and powerful, which is the social media part, the digital part, which they're going to use as they think the hammer to crush Trump. And look, the smartest guy they've got, Michael Bloomberg, here's the tell. He got hawkfish. He realized they had a problem when they put these reports out. They didn't include something where Trump wins in a landslide on election night, and they knew immediately that's a problem because Bloomberg can count. He got hawkfish out there that do the analysis. They think Trump can have 404 electoral votes by late evening on the 3rd. They understand that's going to be almost an impossible fact to reverse. So Bloomberg, he gets hawkfish to go out first off and says, no, if you count all the votes in a week, Biden wins with 280 electoral votes. He'll win when you really do the official, when you really count. More importantly, this is what connects the dots. The $100 million Bloomberg came up with last week, some people couldn't figure it out. It was basically to flood the zone with get out the vote because Bloomberg knows that at 11 o'clock on the 3rd, if Trump is winning in Florida, it could be game, set, match. And so Bloomberg is forcing, and this is why every supporter of President Trump has to understand, and people in Florida, you've got to turn it up because Bloomberg understands that that's the linchpin to this thing on the blood. It's Florida on the evening of the 3rd, right? Bloomberg has now got hawkfish out there spouting this that Trump could have 404 electoral votes. That's a huge problem. They call it the red mirage, right? And the blue shift's going to come. It's the blood red fact or the bold red fact is that Trump will be winning or essentially won the presidency. The blue steal then comes. The blue theft then comes as they try to go in and use the courts to basically count the votes they want to count, right? They want to count the votes they want to count. And they're going to be coming in by the ballot. They'll be coming in by the pound, right? Because they got ballot harvesting. They've got all this stuff. So they're going to sow total chaos. And that's why Trump supporters have got to go to the ramparts today, not tomorrow. Put the golf clubs away, put the tennis rackets away, cut off the football. Forget all that stuff. You've got to get engaged today because this is going to be a long, nasty fight.
I tell you what, Stephen K. Bannon with us, and you're leading this national tour trying to educate, tell everybody what is exactly going on, the red mirage, the blue steel. I asked you this question last night, but I'm going to ask it again for our listeners today, a little bit different, Steve, from last night. Here's another perplexing thing. With a mail-in ballot, ostensibly, you have to get the ballot in the mail, right? Like it has to come to you via your mailbox, which means that to get a mail-in ballot, it stands to reason you have to have a mailbox to get the ballot. Well, if you can get the ballot in your mailbox and you want to mail it back in, all you have to do is put it back in the mailbox from whence it came. Why do you need mail ballot drop boxes? I can't for the life figure this out. If you are afraid about voting and you want to vote by mail, you would get it in the mail in your home or your apartment condo. You would fill it out and you would put it back in the mail slot. Why do you have to go to a mail ballot drop box that's not a mailbox? Can somebody explain this to me?
It's not explainable, John, because this goes back to Joe Biden will be an illegitimate and unelected. He's illegitimate and unelected. It's a complete farce. Of course, if it was a legitimate thing and you actually did a absentee ballot and you sent your thing in and they sent you you got your application, you got your thing and signed it and sealed it like you're supposed to seal it and sign it and do the postmark, you just put it back in your mail thing. The mailman the next day comes and picks it up and they deliver it. But that's not what they're talking about. They're going to be doing this by the pound. They need these quote unquote outside groups, right? To help go around and collect them. collect them, right?
Right.
And then to drop them off in drop boxes. It's a total, complete scam.
Right. See, they don't want you to mail them in, but they don't want you to mail them in. They want you to put them in a Dropbox so they can manipulate them and then stuff the Dropbox. I mean, this is why they're extending it 6 days in Wisconsin, 14 days in. Who the hell ever heard of this? It's like you're voting after the fact, and it's just to say, okay, we lost Michigan by 80,000 votes. We got to now go find them. Go manufacture 81,000, so then we can certify Biden's the winner 2 weeks later. This is insane.
Let's go back if it was 16. Let's go back if it was 16. You're talking, 10 and 11,000 votes in Wisconsin and places like Michigan, and 42,000 votes in Pennsylvania. You don't think they can generate, 60 Minutes? The old Gene Brady in 60 Minutes does this special report on Philadelphia on Sunday night. They don't talk about all the problems they've had with Philadelphia voting. Remember this is why they don't clean up the registration. They don't take the dead people off. They don't take the people who moved off. They want to have plenty of capacity. You don't think in Philadelphia, in the general Philadelphia area, they can't generate 42,000 votes if given a week? You're telling me they can't generate, or in Michigan or in Wisconsin, you can't generate 10 or 15,000 votes if given 2 weeks in Michigan? Go back to 16. If you see how we won in 16, right? If you see how we won in 16, as razor thin as it was, right? You don't think if you have 2 additional weeks in Michigan, you can't come up with the votes we did? Of course you can, if you're focused on it, and they are. And it's not about people legitimately getting an absentee ballot and getting in their mailbox, filling out their thing, putting it back in, having the mailman come back the next day and take it. No, they want to have these groups do ballot harvesting. They want to take off any legitimacy of the signatures or anything like that, right? They'll argue. They'll have these lawyers. Listen, they have 800 top lawyers. After we outed them, they went to the New York Times and gave a full, because they know we outed them. They went to the New York Times and gave a full interview. They have 800 top attorneys. They have the former Attorney General of the United States, Eric Holder's the head of this thing. They have Perkins Coie, which is a big Democrat law firm, is already on retainer. On a general retainer, they have the top election guy is kind of running the thing. They have former Solicitor Generals, former U.S. attorneys, all these Obama appointees. That's why I say this is the Obama restoration. They're in there deep, and these are top-flight legal guys. Listen, one thing our side can't think. Don't think these people are not smart. Don't think they're not cunning. Don't think they don't have all the resources. They're fighting for control of the greatest nation in the history of the earth, and they will leave nothing. They don't play by any set of rules. Their rules are smash mouth. That's why I read that quote last night. There's a quote in this Jeffrey Toobin article in the New York, senior Democratic official. It's a blind quote, but he says, hey, the party today is very different than the party in 2000. When Gore, basically gave up, right before the Electoral College situation in mid-December, he said right now the Democratic Party has is not institutional, it's ideological. And he says there's zero chance, this is his quote, there's zero chance that anyone in the Democratic Party will say for the good of the country, we should back off during this process and just say, hey, we'll get it in 4 years. They think Trump they think that country is unsustainable for 4 years under Trump, and that it's an existential threat. The campaign believes Trump's an existential threat, and this is an existential battle. Their rhetoric is so heated. You don't hear rhetoric like that coming out from anybody on the Trump side, right? I'm starting to highlight it to make sure people understand. Hillary Clinton said, John, in no circumstances, none, Biden's under orders, in no circumstances are you to concede, okay? So this shows you they're playing smash mouth, and they intend to steal this election. And they're not making any qualms about it. They think they have the right. They think that they're morally justified. They're on a high crusade to destroy Trump and Trumpism and the deplorables, and they will let nothing stand in their way. And it's in the media every day. All we're doing is connecting dots. And Raheem Kassam at the National Pulse is doing some amazing reporting on the connections with the Chinese Communist Party, Soros, the Chinese Communist Party. This is so well funded. Bloomberg. Remember, Bloomberg kowtows to the Chinese Communist Party. He was in Singapore at his conference 18 months ago and said Wan Xishan, the biggest devil in the world, was the most powerful and influential person on the political stage globally. And then he gave him an interview, which was all softballs, right? They're up to the neck with the CCP. They're up to the neck with Soros. They're up to the neck with people like Nick Vergruen, right? these nefarious characters that have funded this thing to billions of dollars. They've got the top law firms in the country. They got all the social media platforms. They've got an army of street thugs and Antifa and certain elements of Black Lives Matter, right? And they've got more. They're going to do. It's going to be both a lawfare, street mobs, and a digital mob is going to try to break the Trump movement and break the president after his victory on the 3rd.
Stephen K. Bannon with us, launching his national tour, The Great Blue Steel, how the Democrats are going to try to steal the 2020 election, trying to educate people, get them ready, and ignite the deplorables so they understand what the stakes are, what's going to happen. Let's get to the mob, Steve. This is a little disconcerting. Yesterday, Lindsey Graham at his home, mobs come, 5 a.m., bang on pots. Okay, that's one thing. Then they go to his house, go on his property, banging on the front door. He was able to call the Capitol Police. I don't have the opportunity to do that. A lot of other people don't have Capitol Police that can protect them, like Mayor Lightfoot has in Chicago, or the guy or the lady in Seattle. So when you talk about activate mobs, outline exactly what's going to happen, and do they just want the Trump people to cry uncle?
Well, listen, look at what happened. Look, I'm just taking it from what they're saying publicly. They said Antifa is going to start a siege on the 17th, and it's going to get bigger. They got a guy named Sean. I forget his last name. He's in charge of, the activists. He's in the Vanity Fair piece the other day, talking about, hey, we will get as much civil disobedience, we will get as much a bigger group as possible to show that Trump can't govern the country. That the people won't do it. I'm just reporting from what they're saying. You see what they did the other day at Lindsey Graham's, right? Right. At Lindsey Graham's, and don't think calling the Capitol Police is going to do anything. They're going to kind of stand around. They don't do anything. That's a pure intimidation movement. People should look at that. Look. You're here in New York City. New York City. Why is New York City a ghost town? New York City is a ghost town. This is the greatest city in the world. The driver of culture and media and world capital and finance and all of that. And it's a ghost town. Why is it a ghost town? It's not simply the pandemic and how de Blasio has blown this and Cuomo. The other part is the lawlessness of it. Why are so many people moving out to Connecticut and Florida and the Caribbean and getting out of town? Why are they doing that? It's not just, it's the lawlessness and anarchy of it. That Black Lives Matter the other night can certain elements are peaceful protesters, but there's a hardcore Marxist element to that that's been funded by the CCP. That those dots have been connected, right? That they shut down the George Washington Bridge the other night just randomly. Antifa's going around with random things. It's the lawlessness and anarchy, and that's what they intend to show. That they're going to bring as much as possible and show that Trump. By the way, this is going to be like Richmond in June, and it's going to be like Washington, D.C. in June, which was never really reported. And, hey, most conservatives and most Republicans left town, right? The president was kind of there by himself with his, certain parts of his administration. That's why he had those nights that got very dicey. You had a couple of nights there. We had one, I think there were 61 Secret Service officers that were injured on that one night, on that Friday night where it got out of control in Lafayette Park before they put the fencing around it. This was very dicey, and they intend to flood the streets with civil disobedience to show that Trump cannot govern the country, that he, quote unquote, he's illegitimate, he's got to go.
Steve, let me ask you this. I've only got a couple minutes, but you brought up Antifa the other day, a couple of days ago, shutting down the George Washington Bridge. That was for no reason. I mean, there was nothing going on for them to protest in New York. They just haphazardly shut traffic down forever.
No. The purpose is to show people here that you can never get stability in your life while they're in control. Remember, they don't make any demands. The purpose of the revolution is the revolution. They just randomly shut down the George Washington Bridge on a Friday night, I think it's like 9 or 10 o'clock. And it's barely reported in the media. Look, I just point back to the audience of the John Fredericks Radio Network. Look how little reported what happened in Richmond was. It was crickets about what really happened. Nothing. By the way, you've got four major TV networks there. You've got ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox all have bureaus. You got a major newspaper in the Richmond Times-Dispatch owned by the Oracle of Omaha, right? You've got you got an AP. It's a state capital. You got a Federal Reserve. It's only Denver and Richmond, I think, are the places that got a state capital and a Federal Reserve and a federal court. Right, it's one of the centerpieces. You got plenty of reporting. You got a head of Associated Press there, regional thing. You got a state capital, a Federal Reserve, and a federal court. Richmond's a place, right? Nothing. Crickets, pure crickets. The purpose of the revolution is the revolution. That's why they're randomly going around and shutting things down to show people in New York, we're in control, you're not in control. Don't think you can just drive, one day on the FDR, we're going to shut it down, and you're going to be intimidated, and that's just the way life's going to be. Because here, de Blasio and Cuomo, it's total anarchy. It's total anarchy, and the police have backed off under orders. They're furious, right? That's what. Look at them now. This place is a ghost town. You're in Midtown Manhattan, right across from Rockefeller Center, and it's like Christmas morning, right? And it's been like that every day since since the day after Labor Day, which is usually the most intense period of the year. The fourth quarter, the people try to get everything done before the Christmas holidays. But you're not seeing it now, and that's what they want. And it's only going to intensify when President Trump wins. Remember, he's going to win the game day vote on the 3rd, and they're going to explode. They're in courts right now to stop it. They got changing all these rules. They want to continue to count until they win. Once they win, then they're going to get the vote certified. And by the way, if they can't win, they're going to blow through the Electoral College. They'll never certify the vote on the state level. They'll be in court arguing, and then kick it to the House of Representatives, to Nancy Pelosi in the House in January. This is why, by the way, when I say overplay their hand, this is what demands to have a Supreme Court justice now. They have forced so many of these issues, as 60 Minutes reports, they have to go to the Supreme Court, that you need a justice immediately. If I was President Trump, I'd name the glorious ACB today. I'd have Grassley have a hearing on Thursday. I'd have him work through the weekend. Sunday he would pitch it. They'd vote Saturday afternoon, pitch it to the Senate, get rolling on Monday. Have your debate, let guys, whine, throw down, all that. Have a vote by the following Thursday, put her in the court, swear her in on Friday, let's get on with it. They've driven this. It is the left that's driven a necessity, an absolute necessity to have a ninth justice right now. You can't have a 4-4 court when the Democrats have forced all this bizarro, making up new regulations, all going to be different in all 50 states, right, of how they're going to try to steal the election. Just remember, and this is what the Trump movement has to embrace, Joe Biden on his best day is illegitimate and unelected.
John Fredericks Radio Network, Stephen K. Bannon with us, the Blue Steel, the Red Mirage, and as Steve just said, the left has necessitated that we put another justice on the Supreme Court before November 3rd. Steve, your tour, I got to go, but what's stop number 2? Where is it?
We're doing a stop in New York tomorrow night on the Metropolitan New York Club, but we've been inundated, so we're going to be doing probably 5 a night digitally starting on Thursday, and everybody can sign up. We got a big sign up.